Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 16 of season 4 of Babylon 5, Exercise of Vital Powers. Ivanova is reporting as the voice of the resistance. The fleet continues to progress, hearing stories of atrocities ordered by President Clark. Beta Girani and a mid-range military base have been freed. We see the fleet in space as the voiceover switches to Garibaldi, wondering if Sheridan thinks he's Alexander the Great, or if he just wants the whole show for himself. Then we see him in a travel tube on Mars, a place that's nearly killed him 3 times, and yet somehow he finds himself back there again. Yet he doesn't think they even have a right to be there. Mr. Edgars has a private dock, but his main aide, Mr. Wade, still wants Garibaldi in a blindfold, which he is very reluctant to put on. The options are put it on or be put on a ship going off Mars. Not much choice and no exceptions. Mars rising used to be a sign of war, Mr. Wade tells us. The population is up to 2 million now, and Garibaldi thinks it's still a bad sign, and he can't believe he's back. Back in the station, Franklin is busy killing a telepath, or getting somewhere close to it, before he backs off and the shadow implants stop objecting to his attempt. Zack arrives to sympathise and asks him how it's going. He says that every path in he tries to take, the implants react and threaten to destroy the telepath. Defence system upon defence system, and it's really annoying him, almost as much as the repeated quests for updates Sheridan makes whenever he's in touch. He's very keen for them to be mobile as soon as possible, but of course he's not telling Franklin why. Franklin can't even use his mainline tools because everything has to be isolated, given that they try and bond with any systems they're in proximity to as soon as they do wake up. Lita comes in looking for Zack, who wants her to scan a victim of an attack to try and help them remember their attacker so they can then do a lineup. She agrees, subject to a 10% uplift on her fee if she has to relive the attack. She wouldn't have been able to scan a suspect, interestingly. It would have been a breach of due process. As Zack heads out, she notices the telepath in the examination room and reaches out to him almost instinctively, hearing the shadows scream. Franklin's colleague drops her notes in shock, and Franklin spins round to find the telepath on his feet, extending his hand to Lita's against the glass, eyes open, conscious and calm. Franklin calls her name and she breaks contact, the telepath falling unconscious again. A luxurious-looking complex somewhere on Mars. Garibaldi walks through a very well-appointed room. He almost immediately meets his ex, Lise, who is clearly caught flat-footed, saying it isn't a good time. He responds that it never is for them. Then the elusive Mr. Edgars is there, white hair, moustache, and Lisa's gone. He offers Garibaldi a drink, but not an alcoholic one. He makes it a point to know all he can about his employees, and that, of course, is off limits for Michael. He gets straight to it. He said he'd meet Mr. Garibaldi when the time was right, but Michael's pushed. Why? He wants to know who he's been dealing with, what it is he's been smuggling past Babylon 5 customs, and he wants Sheridan's war over. But he doesn't want him turned over to Clark without a guarantee that he'll get treatment rather than a hole through the skull. Even with Clark's dominance, Garibaldi figures someone like Edgars has enough people in his own pocket to exert influence on Clark. Edgars asks, not unreasonably, what's in it for him. Garibaldi suggests everyone loves a hero, and the next president would owe him, always assuming it wasn't him, of course. Edgars considers, but says Garibaldi is only halfway in. He needs to trust him completely, and he believes Garibaldi will want to know if he can trust Edgars in the same way. So it's going to be an interesting weekend. He's shown to a very small room, spaces at a premium on Mars, and given no timescales as to when he'll see Edgars next. He duly touches everything as he was told not to touch anything, and lies down to rest. On the station, Franklin tracks down Lita, who left because she thought she disrupted an experiment, but he immediately reassures her that wasn't the case, that she got a reaction from his patient that was unprecedented. She explains rather hesitantly that when she reached out to his mind, she heard the sound a shadow vessel makes when it passes by, and she instinctively made it go away, waking the telepath. Franklin is fascinated and excited in equal measure, and asks her to come back after her job is done. She's hesitant, but he stresses that her people she'd be helping, and she relents. On Mars, Garibaldi is bundled out of bed by 3 hooded figures and put in a room with a short-haired woman sat at a table. Edgar's voice reassures him that there's nothing to worry about, that he's not in any imminent danger. The woman is a psycho telepath, gloved as usual. She's there to surface scan him for the truth only, and the muscle was to ensure he was unprepared and off balance, so defences against the scan are less likely to work. He's asked what he thinks about telepaths and he's hesitant, but Edgar assures him the woman is there to do her job and not judge. So he opens up and says he doesn't trust them, never will, because he doesn't like anyone having the power to get in his head, and the safeguards don't work. There'll always be a gulf between them and normal humans. So he sees them as the biggest threat going that's going to boil over one day. He's asked about Sheridan, although only obliquely, and asked if he can guarantee bringing him in. He says he can, and the telepath confirms. He's also asked about his missing time from the start of the year, and says he doesn't remember, which interestingly the telepath confirms as a true statement. Edgars then goes on to probe why he wants to know about what Eggers is doing, given that he's already been given a cover story. Garibaldi notes that if he really needed pharmaceuticals moving, he'd just use a ship of his own. The fact that he's doing it under the radar means he's at risk in doing it, and everyone lies. Edgar's Riley observes that that's a sad world view, but Michael says it works for him. As he's about to leave, Edgar asks if he's still in love with his wife. He says he isn't, but once he's left, the telepath indicates he was lying. Still, when Edgar sees Lise, he says she didn't come up in conversation, and Mr. Garibaldi will be a fine addition to the team. Then we see Mr. Wade come to give the telepath her payment, a close-range PPG barrage. On the station, Franklin tells Lita he needs her to revive the telepath again, but gradually, so he can monitor the physical effect of her mental manipulation. He hopes to be able to emulate what she achieves, so that they can at least communicate with them, even if they can't yet remove the implants themselves. He sees that their acetylcholine levels drop as she works, meaning the implants have been stimulating their brain's speed, resulting in them casting about if they awake without instructions. Unfortunately, as the telepath's eyes open, he sees the scanner over his face and flashes back to his conversion process, resulting in him gripping Franklin by the throat as he tries to reassure him that the ships are gone. He then wonders what he is and how he can continue to live, before grabbing an instrument and intending to suicide. Franklin grabs him from behind, but it's Lita who mind-locks him and puts him back to sleep, before turning away and leaving. On Mars, Edgars and Garibaldi share an orange juice imported at great expense, and philosophical ideas on happiness, involving the exercise of vital powers. What would happen, Edgars wonders, in a world of telepaths who don't wear badges? Garibaldi doesn't see how they could take over, as they don't have the numbers, but Edgars says it isn't about numbers. It never has been. No past dictator ever took power. It was given to them because people were too stupid or too scared to keep it from them. And once they had the power, it was very difficult to dislodge them. And so Clark had Santiago killed on the promise of more power by manipulating fear of aliens and control of information. The Psychor were at once tools and a deterrent, because those promising him power were interested in them, so he was too. They also allowed him to monitor those close to him. Yet Edgars and the other Megacorps owners have now recognised that Clark is giving more power to the telepaths, and that could lead to their business interests being threatened. They're the ones really running the show in the background, and Clark's too much of an amateur to see it. Sheridan is a problem, because in giving Clark a real threat, his fear will lead him to put Psychor into more positions of power higher up the chain, and if that happens before the Megacorps are ready, then the telepaths will have the high ground. Edgars just needs more time to prepare. With that, he leaves Garibaldi to consider joining Lise for breakfast. The fleet is receiving more defecting ships seemingly daily. Delenn is due back from Minbar in a couple of days, and all is quiet on the Epsilon front. Sheridan asks to be routed to Franklin, who is up to his ears working on a way to amplify Lisa's telepathic signal so they can wake the telepaths for a short period. Sheridan is still pushing for a timescale, and a distracted Franklin demands to know what the plan is in order that he can get the job done properly. Sheridan tells him to clear Medlab, then to recode the message every 3 seconds. We don't hear what he's told, but he walks out of Medlab in a daze as Lisa joins him. He says he isn't okay, and wonders out loud just how changed Sheridan really was by his experience on Zahadum, beyond the physiological effect he knows about, because the Sheridan he thought he knew never would have told him what this one just did. He then asks Lisa if she'd be up for a long-term assignment. She agrees, and he tells her to pack. they're going to Mars. And on Mars, Lise brings Garibaldi a meal he's missed, and he asks her the obvious question, why Edgar's and not him? It's not the money. She explains, not unkindly, that he wasn't present in their relationship. His only relationship was with his job. He didn't say I love you until it was said to him. Didn't remember Christmas. She feels she drove the relationship. He can see that, but he did and does genuinely care for her. But when she asks if he would have left Babylon 5 when her last marriage broke down, he says he doesn't know, and she tearfully tells him she's too old for I don't know. She tells him to eat his food while it's hot and leaves. Mr. Wade stands over the beds of 3 individuals. Edgar joins him, although Wade thinks he should be resting. But he sits and places his hand on the head of one of the patients, his skin mottled, peeling. He's been off a drug for 5 days, and this seemingly is the result. The man is in pain, and Edgar orders them all put down, saying there's enough pain in the universe already. Wade notes that the tests aren't finished, but Edgar is adamant it's enough. Later, sat reading an antique book, Garibaldi joins him and says he's in, but that's not enough. He needs Sheridan as a down payment. Edgar knows Clark will want to use him, not just kill him, and he will make his move before then. Finally, Garibaldi caves and says that he can get him through his father, who needs a rare and expensive Centauri medicine, which he won't have had time to stockpile before going into hiding. So someone will be getting it for him. Find that someone, find his father. Edgar asks more. Will he be the one to lure him in and bring him down? He says yes, he can do it, and he heads back to Dome 1 to make arrangements. In the tube, his internal monologue notes again that this place has nearly killed him 3 times, and this time it seems to have finished the job. He doesn't feel anything except for Lise. He wanted to make up for the past, but maybe that's just not possible. So, a great deal less pew-pew in this one as compared with the last episode. All you get here is implied pew-pew from Ivanova's progress reports. Consequently, this is actually a very dialogue-heavy episode. Well, let's focus on the station for now, because Sheridan has been banging on about the popsicle teeps for a couple of episodes, but we still don't know why he wants them exactly. But we know they're part of the campaign, and we know he wants to be able to deploy them in some fashion. And lo and behold, Lita is once again integral to their plans, because they're going to be reliant on her powers to activate them. And she's going to Mars with Franklin. So that suggests it's something to do with the Resistance there, who we've established ties to this season already. We also know that Franklin thinks whatever it is Sheridan's planning is pretty hardcore and out there because of his comments to Lita about him being different post Zahadum. Now the thing is, I'm not necessarily convinced he is massively different. Granted, he's got a shorter lifespan now, which may well focus your mind on your goals, but right from the get-go, we've been told this is a man who accomplishes crazy things with inferior forces. He's chosen to take on the First Ones and the entire Earth Alliance. This is right up his alley, surely. I suspect Ivanova isn't bothered by any of this because she's seen him in full military mode. I think it's more the case that the others just haven't up to this point. What do you think? Was Severed Dream Sheridan softer than No Surrender, No Retreat Sheridan? That's really about all we see of Sheridan in this episode on a vid screen, briefly on the bridge of White Star 2 as we get fleet beauty shots into the bargain. We see that Lita is falling back into her old role of commercial telepath and liaising with Zack, right up until the point she links into the popsicle teep and the Vorlon element of her ability just kicks in to drown out the shadow influence. It's nicely played between the two of them. After all, they don't need words, although for our benefit we do have an exchange to explain why he's trying to suicide, and she gently stops him. It must be quite a hard thing for her to see a fellow telepath going through, and somewhat ironic given that they're reflections of each other, one modified by the shadows, the other by the Vorlons, almost cancelling each other out. One small detail, almost surprised he didn't go more psycho than he did, because she's wearing a Psychor badge now that they're trained to react to in self-defense. I guess Lisa just sat on that reaction too. And so Mr. Edgars. Now, we still don't know the full picture here. What is very clear, however, is that Lisa really doesn't know what she's married to, because he's ordering murders left, right and centre that his pet psycho Mr. Wade is only too happy to execute for him. He also seems to be likening the Megacorps of Earth to the Illuminati, the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, almost as Justin described himself to Sheridan on Zahadum. And he really wants to keep his shareholders happy by not letting the Psychor get into a position where telepaths will be able to dominate normals. and he does make some interesting points in light of our recent history, that if you can bring people with you, you don't necessarily have to dominate them militarily. And once Psi Corps members take off their badges, how would you tell them apart? This is evolution writ large, of course, and the sort of thing Bester would probably love to see. Clearly, Edgars has other ideas, and it's apparent he's testing something in his Mars facility that he believes will give him the upper hand. And I think I heard right that the people in the lab were dying having been taken off a drug, which implies the drug would control whatever is wrong with them. So of course, if you control the supply of said drug, then you're the dealer for the addicts. I would imagine it will get the whole picture before long. There's just a small matter of Mr. Garibaldi stitching up Captain Sheridan. And that is one hell of a leap for him to be making. So there's also that big question as to what's made him turn quite so completely, even if he still seems concerned to get Sheridan help, rather than having him eliminated. But as he says to himself at the end of the episode, he doesn't feel alive anymore. Only at least seems to make him still feel human. We've run into a few things that could make someone display altered mental states over the course of the show, so I guess we'll just have to see how things pan out. Lee seems quite loyal to Edgars, although she doesn't go storming off when Michael badmouths him, so there's a clearing of the air between them to a degree, and you can't just erase their history. Notice that there was mention of Delenn having finished up on Minbar and coming back to the station in a couple of days. This might be the longest we've gone without seeing her over the entire course of the show's run. So this may not be the most action-packed episode, but you get the impression that a lot of pieces are getting put into place here for the culmination of the season, which isn't that far off at this point. There have been so many mini-arcs, the pace is just incredible when you stop and think about it this season, which I may well do in a few weeks' time. It is, in any event, time to swap to the penultimate disc in the box, with just half a dozen episodes left to go in the penultimate season of Babylon 5. See you for the next one.